Hello and welcome to the farming guide. In the process of building my mega farm, I have gotten extremely frustrated with the lack of a complete farming guide. And now that I've looked through all the guides and I am burdened with knowledge, I figured, why not just make one myself? In this video, we'll be talking about this guy, we'll be talking about how to build farms, how to farm those farms, which crops are best for money or XP, and everything you will need along the way. Okay, first things first, getting started. Now, there's no easy way to say this. You're gonna have to build one of the farms yourself with no tools. I mean, you can use the builder's wand, and you can get the Infinidirt wand really easily, but you're not going to have a hoe of greater tilling, you're not going to have prisma pumps, you're not going to have any of that cool stuff, unless you have a friend, but I don't know what that's like. Now, before we do anything, I want to quickly talk about this guy. I don't know why he looks like Steve, but this guy. Jacob is a fairly new NPC that was added that has contests. They happen every hour and you can get some pretty great rewards from them. As you can see, I've been doing cocoa beans a lot. We'll get to that later. In these contests, you can get bronze, silver, and gold. You can also get one Jacob's ticket if you just farm 100 of any crop, which I mean, that's cool and all, but considering they're dirt cheap, it's not really worth your time. Now onto the important stuff, the farming shop. Now, when I first saw these items, I could have sworn I was reading it wrong because these are so wildly overpowered that you can genuinely build some farms in like 20 minutes. To start off, we have the Infinidirt wand. This places dirt at the cost of 1 coin per block. You can put this inside the builder's wand and just have infinite dirt at your disposal. Next, we have the prisma pump. When you place this down, you can put water next to it and the entire row will fill up. I'm not going to talk about the hoe of great tilling. It's just a worse version of the hoe of greater tilling. I don't know why anyone would buy this. Either way, the hoe of greater tilling tills a 5x5 area of farmland at a time. And yeah, you can farm rows while flying at max speed. This is easily one of the most OP things that has been added. Next, we have the basket of seeds and the Netherwart pouch. These are my two personal favorites, mostly because they're the most satisfying item to use. If you're just starting out, this won't matter a whole lot, but there's also tools for each and every crop. They all cost a gold medal and 32 Jacob's tickets, which the gold medal's a lot, the Jacob's tickets aren't anything like I've said before, but these will all be extremely necessary if you want to get gold medals in the future. Also, for the dedicated farming enthusiasts, if you get a gold in a collection, you can up your farming cap all the way to 60. Also, you can boost your farming drops at the cost of a gold medal. It's very nice, it's very nice. Now that we've gone over that, let's talk about how to actually start building these farms. Now, if you have friends that are willing to lend you farming items, then everything I'm about to say kind of doesn't matter. But if you're in the same boat as me, then build a cocoa bean farm. The cocoa bean farm does not use any of the farming tools, aside from the Infinidirt wand. But like I said, that thing is dirt cheap to get, so that's not really a problem. So if you're gonna be doing it by hand, you might as well do this first anyway. Also, it is by far one of the easiest to get a silver in. You'll notice that my farm isn't even completed. Well, that's because the cocoa bean farm is an extremely small farm. These things regrow in like 18 rows. I didn't even need to build this many. But after you've built this, you can start getting silver medals, buy all the cool tools that you need to build the other farms, and then you're good to go. Also, just a side note, another reason why cocoa beans are great to start with is because you get the enchanted book Replenish from cocoa beans, so that's definitely a must-have. Alright, so now we're going to talk about how to actually build these farms. First, we're going to start with wheat, carrot, and potato. They have the exact same design, so I figured I'd group them together. Now, for all of these farms, I'm going to give a step-by-step of like the actual process that I go through to build the farm. Now, as far as the design goes, honestly, you could just come to my island and look at how to build these farms. It's not rocket science. But when it comes to the process of building these farms, that's where I want to help out. And hopefully I don't miss anything, but we're going through 10 farms, so no promises. So starting off, you want to just build dirt layers 2 blocks apart, depending on how many layers you want. For wheat, carrot, and potato, I would suggest 4 layers. It might be a little bit overkill, but I mean, if you're building a mega farm, like, who are you kidding? You might as well just build the extra layer. Now, after you've built all the dirt layers, what you can do is run across and dig out rows 2 layers at a time. Now, you're gonna need some equipment to give yourself the right speed, but once you're done, you'll know you've done it right because you'll have rows of 5, and I don't know how, but it magically is perfectly even at the end. After you finish these rows, you'll want to make sure that you have a hoe of greater tilling and a basket of seeds. What you'll do is just fly across with the hoe of tilling, hoe an entire row, and then once you get to the end, it's taking a lot longer than I thought. Once you get to the end, you'll get your basket of seeds and just plant the entire row. Now, you want to make sure you do that row by row, because if you till the entire thing, soil that isn't watered will eventually over time just turn back to dirt. So it's not worth, you know, doing all the rows and then going back and planting, because there's going to be these little spots that are dirt, and the basket of seeds does not skip those blocks. The next thing you'll want to do is go through and place these glowstone lines. Now, don't worry about these holes in here. Just place the lines all the way down. We'll get to these later. Now, one thing I would suggest with these glowstone lines is to place a block at the end of each row, just so that you don't end up flying off into space or building it out too far. It makes it a lot faster than you would think, and you can also do it a lot more mindlessly. The next thing we want to do is to dig out the holes for the water. These are spaced based on the actual amount of area that water can supply, and the important thing to remember is that a source block can water 4 in all directions. So 4 this way, and that means that you'll want to space them out so that there's no overlap along the row. Obviously there's going to be overlap in between the rows because this goes out 1, 2, 3, 4. That doesn't matter. You just want to make sure that the entire row is going to get water. Also, another pro tip, when I was digging these out, I just used a shovel. Glowstone doesn't really break that much faster with the pickaxe, so you're not losing out on that much time. And then whenever I got to the bottom, I would just use the aspect of the end to get to the top. It's one of the easiest ways to do it that I've found, and if you're doing it with 12 layers, that probably is the fastest way. Obviously, I'm not going to sit here and recommend that you have wise armor. That's kind of insane, but if you do, that's definitely the best way to do this. Also, make sure not to place the water like where the glowstone is, because it will spill out on each side. You want to make sure you place it in the actual hole on the top row. Also, another thing to remember, plug the bottom of the holes, otherwise it's gonna, spill onto your farms. But I'm very smart, I never dealt with that. Now, when it comes to farming wheat, carrot, potato, and netherwart, you'll want to be in version 1.12. The reason why is the crops have a higher hitbox, so you can fly through without having to worry about hitting a seed that you just replenished. Now, to farm these farms, you'll want to use a flying method. It has been proved that flying is the best for these farms, so I wouldn't even bother trying to make one that you run through. It's just not as good. What you'll want to do is either fly at full speed or fly at an angle so that you hit more crops in each row. Personally, I like to fly at an angle. I feel like it just always ends up getting more crops, but you can also kind of just mindlessly fly at full speed and you'll get a similar outcome. Alright, now on to Netherwart. Building the farm for Netherwart is extremely easy. You can honestly get it done if you're quick in like 30 or 40 minutes. All you have to do is build layers of soul sand spaced 2 blocks apart and then just run through and dig out rows. Now, you can either do it every 6th block or every 11th block, meaning you'll either have rows of 5 or rows of 10. This depends on whichever farming method you prefer. Like I said, it's the same farming method as wheat, carrot, and potato. So build it based on whichever farming style you like best. For me, I like slow farming, so I just built them in rows of 10 because it's a little bit more efficient for me. Now, after you've placed all your layers and dug out the rows, the great thing about a Netherwart farm is you can just go straight ahead and plant. For me, with 4 full layers, it cost about 80,000 crops, I think, to plant the entire thing. But if you want to do it the easier way, you can always just plant crops, farm them out, and replenish it that way. Next on the list is pumpkin and melon. For these farms, you'll want to build full layers of dirt. do remember to make guide rails on either side. You can just put like one block to walk on, but since I like to do this pretty mindlessly, I make sure to put an actual like extra block so I don't end up walking off the edge. Now, after you've built all your dirt layers, what you'll want to do is go through and plant rows of seeds every other 2 rows. So it goes seed, seed, pumpkin, pumpkin, seed, seed, pumpkin, pumpkin. After this, you can place the glowstone. Now, I kind of went overkill with the glowstone just because I could, but you do not need this much. You absolutely do not need this much glowstone. You don't need a very high light level for them to be able to grow. So I definitely would not suggest doing this much unless you just want to be overkill like me. So alternatively, you can use slabs and just place slabs up until the water source, place glowstone, and then place slabs, glowstone. It's definitely a lot cheaper, so if you're on a budget, go with that method. Alright, so after you've placed your glowstone or slabs or whatever you end up doing, what you'll want to do is on the rows where you've placed your glowstone, you'll want to go through and start cutting out holes where you'll put your water. Now, you can't do this the same as the wheat, carrot, and potato, since for this one you're actually running through. You don't want to leave a hole there that you'll constantly be getting snagged on as you farm your farm. Now, if you built your farm exactly like this, where it starts on one end with seed, pumpkin, pumpkin, seed, seed, you'll want to place your water on the right side of this row so that it waters all 4 of these blocks, because it needs to be able to hit this end. It doesn't matter if these rows are watered where the pumpkin is, but it needs to be able to hit these seeds on the end. And then after that row, you'll just skip a row and then put another water source block on the right side here. And after this, it's pretty much a waiting game for all your pumpkins to grow, and you'll know you've done it right when you see these little holes in your farm. That's just where the water source blocks are. Now when it comes to farming pumpkins, the best speed is somewhere between 250 and 260. It depends based on what your connection to the server is, so don't be worried if someone says like, it's this exact number. It changes for everyone. Now remember, you'll need a golden axe with efficiency 5 to farm out both pumpkins and melons. Oh, and by the way, you can build pumpkin farms differently. It doesn't end up mattering a whole lot in the end. I think one has more pumpkins, but one is slightly more efficient in growth speed, but there's less pumpkins, so you farm it faster. At that point, you're really kind of nickel and diming it because the difference isn't that much. Now, the next farm we're going to talk about is mushroom farms. Now, if you're wanting to farm these infinitely, don't. To be able to do them infinitely, I think you need 14 to 16 layers. It gets pretty insane. Now what you want to do is build out these rows with this design across your bottom layer. Now you'll want to make sure that these have a spacing of 2 blocks, not 1 block like our other farms. The reason for this is that if you have them too close, the mushrooms don't grow properly, so make sure that you have these spaced out by 2 blocks. Now before you plant any of the mushrooms, what you'll want to do is get a builder's wand and build these rows up. And after you've built it up, you'll go through with a shovel and dig out the layers, leaving a 2 wide space. Now, one important thing to remember is if you want to be able to reuse the podzol that you dig out, you'll need silk touch on your shovel. Otherwise, you will lose every bit of podzol that you dig out. And it gets to be pretty expensive, so definitely make sure you have silk touch on your shovel as you're doing that. That way you can reuse whatever podzol you dig out to build more layers. Now, to plant the mushrooms, you'll do it exactly like this with red on one side and brown on the other, and that goes for all rows, but make sure it alternates across. So red, brown, and then the next row, red, brown. You never want to have 2 of the same color on the same side, otherwise it, messes with however mushrooms grow. The mechanics for mushrooms are really weird, but trust me, this is the way to plant mushroom farms. Now, farming these farms is pretty easy. You can run across at whatever your max speed is. I don't think there's a speed too fast. I've seen some people say 350 is the fastest, but like I say, just test for yourself whatever's too fast. Make sure to never dig out your source mushrooms because those are the ones that actually replant everything. But on these little side rows, you can run through, dig out your mushrooms, and then just go back and forth and back and forth. Also, this is another one where I would definitely suggest putting guide rails on. It's really easy to walk off the edge when you're doing these, especially running at max speed, so I would definitely suggest this. Next on the list is sugarcane. These farms are definitely one of the best farms to have on your island. They can make you a lot of money and also help out with alchemy a lot. To build the farms, you'll want to follow this pattern across the whole way. Basically, water, 2 blocks of sugarcane, water. Again, this is pretty basic Minecraft stuff, but this is one where you want to make sure to build it out in all dirt. Otherwise, you're going to have to go through and build out each row or dig out each row for water. And both of those kind of suck. So if you want to be the most efficient, you can build this design all in dirt and then just builder's wand all the way across. After you've finished building the layer of dirt, what you'll want to do is go through with a Prisma pump and a magic water bucket and just place the pumps, place the water, let them fill in. And also a thing to note, you can actually break the Prisma pump before the row's done filling in and it'll still finish. After this, the next steps are pretty obvious. You want to go ahead and plant your sugarcane. The best way that I've found to plant the sugarcane is to walk through the rows with Depth Strider and just plant row by row at an angle so that you match the speed that you can plant them. After you finish planting the sugarcane, you'll want to go through with either slabs or blocks and basically build guide rails. This makes it to where you can walk through the same way as you do with pumpkins and melons and farm out the sugarcane. You go through at a speed of around 250 to 260 and dig out the middle layer of sugarcane, making sure to leave the bottom one untouched. Next on the list, we have cactus farms. When it comes to building these, it's pretty straightforward. Planting these is what is going to take up most of your time for cactus farms. To build this farm, you'll want to follow this design with an entire layer of dirt and the sand on top. Obviously, sand falls, so you need to make sure that there's something under it so that you don't ever have to deal with that. Now, on the sand layer, you'll want to place sand every 9 blocks. This will give you these rows of 8 sand blocks. The reason for this is because you want 1 row to walk on, 6 rows for cactus, and then another row to walk on. Now, to actually plant the cactus, you have to do it in a diagonal pattern since cactus can't be right next to each other. If you want to be really efficient when planting these, the best way to do it is to go through and just do this. It can be a bit tough, but once you get the rhythm, you'll end up having rows done really, really quick. Now, you won't be able to farm the cactus unless you have a cactus knife. So you'll have to actually get a gold medal from another crop before you can buy the cactus knife. Once you have the cactus knife, all you need to do to farm is walk at max speed sideways at a slight angle. And finally, cocoa beans. Now, despite not being able to use seed bags to plant the actual cocoa beans, this is by far one of the easiest farms to build, albeit a little bit expensive. Now, when building a cocoa bean farm, you want to follow this pattern and build this all the way across your island. Now, you don't need a full layer of this. You can use about 18 rows, and I think at that point it's infinite. If you want to build more, you can. It's a bit overkill, but it can help a tiny bit for farming contests. But to build the farm, what you want to do is build out this design for dirt, and then builder's wand all the way across. And then the tricky part is the jungle wood. Now, I had to mess with this a little bit, but the fastest way to do the jungle wood is to build these little towers of jungle wood all the way across and connect them like this. Now, the reason I do it like this is because the jungle wood has to be in the same orientation to be able to use the builder's wand. Now, obviously those 2 rows of jungle wood are going to get in the way, so all you need to do to get rid of them is to get a good axe, drink a haste 3-pot, and just dig out the rows. Once you're done with that, all you have to do is walk through and plant your cocoa beans. The fastest way I've found to do this is to walk through at an angle to where your speed matches the rate that you can actually plant the cocoa beans. After you finish planting the top layer on one side, you turn around and do it on the other, then the middle layers, and then the bottom layers. I found that the best speed for farming cocoa beans is somewhere around 150 to 160. Again, it depends based on your connection to the server, but at that speed, all you have to do is angle upwards and dig out each row. Now, if you're struggling to find the right angle, the best way I've found is to use the horizon line and line it up with your hotbar. At that angle, you barely ever miss a cocoa bean. So we've talked about how to build the farms, how to farm those farms, but which farms are best for money and XP? When it comes to XP, pumpkin farms have pretty much been the best forever. Nothing really beats it if you have an infinite farm. Now, when it comes to money, sugarcane tends to be the most consistent money maker, but it can change from time to time depending on updates and depending on the market. So before you start farming for hours, make sure to check the bazaar to see which item is actually selling best. Also, one thing I want to quickly note is that all of this is assuming that you are a mid to late game player. You can build farms at early game, but they cost a lot of money, like millions of coins to build. And you also need things like a personal compactor, like a max tier agronomy sack, a magical water bucket. You need a lot of things to be able to get started on this, and if you're not there yet, it's best to kind of just not worry about it. Anyways, that's all from me. If I missed anything at all, make sure to comment it down below so I can tag it and let other people know. And if I don't answer anything here, you can always visit my island and check the farm for yourself. Now, if you don't mind, I got some farming to do. A lot of farming.